What do you do when the career you spent years building just isn't an option anymore? Most people panic, but Dr. Namrata Upadhyay didn't. She built an empire. She went from a practicing dentist to a game changing entrepreneur, launching the Global Dentist Pool, a platform shaking up the medtech world by connecting clinicians with industry in a whole new way. But here's the real story. This isn't just a career pivot for her. As a trailing spouse, she found herself in Switzerland, unable to practice, forced to start from scratch. Instead of giving up, she reinvented herself, proving that your expertise doesn't define you. Your adaptability does. Today, we're diving into reinventing yourself when life forces a change. We'll be talking about how she built a global platform that's disrupting the dental industry and the mindset shift that separates those who pivot from those who get stuck. If you've ever felt like you were starting over or needed a sign to finally take that leap, this is it. Let's get into it. Thank you so much for joining me today. I've really been looking forward to this conversation. And I remember the first time that we connected and you were telling me about your journey. I was just amazed at how many things we have in common. But I wanted to start and see if you could tell us a little bit about your journey from dentistry into entrepreneurship. I know it's a long one, so feel free to start any place you'd like.
Sure. Thanks a lot, Jamelia. It's been a fun journey because it wasn't predicted, as is the case for most people who enter entrepreneurship. And in my case, well, I'm the daughter of a diplomat, so I pretty much grew up all over the place growing up. And finally, when I reached, my college years, I said to my parents that, you know what, you guys keep on doing the thing you're doing, and I'm going to go ahead and stick around in one place. So I decided to pursue dentistry, mainly because I loved biology and I was good with sculpture and artsy things, use of the hands. So I said that, okay, what combines those two? Well, dentistry is an interesting option. And of course, the goal at that point was I'm going to be a dentist. I'm probably going to do a master's in dentistry. And then, this is my career. And then afterwards, I did end up practicing in India, where I'm originally from, and Ljubljana, Slovenia. After that, I got married and then I became a trailing spouse. So I followed my husband to Switzerland. And since then, it's been a fun journey because number one, I wasn't allowed to practice dentistry anymore because you have to redo the whole thing from scratch, all your education, everything. So that was not an option for me, something I was very clear about, which was, I love this profession so much. I'm a good dentist, but doing the whole thing all over again kind of a no brainer for me. So I then decided to enter the medtech space, and that was my corporate career transition that I decided to take. I quickly grew in that, interestingly, in that process within corporate. And what I essentially got to experience was the world of medical device manufacturing from the industry perspective. And I had used a lot of products in my clinical practice, but I had no clue how they're made. And now I was getting to kind of really learn how the process of a medical device or software development actually takes place. And getting these two hats, understanding both sides of the table kind of uniquely positioned me in this place of understanding what are the pain points of clinicians as a human being? What are they looking for in their careers? Is it literally just dentistry? What else can we do? How can we provide our services to a broader audience rather than just our clinics? I was tapping into that knowledge because I'd been there. And then I was tapping into the knowledge of what are R&D teams going through, what are engineers going through, how does, procurement and sales and distribution, what are their challenges? And marketing, definitely. All of that led me to finally come up with this idea that I have launched now called the Global Dentist Pool, where I said, how cool would it be if we make a platform which is kind of like an Upwork Fiverr for dentech. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring easy access of global dentists to manufacturers for all variety of projects, KOL, procurement, just finding the right people to support you along that journey. And that's where the whole idea kind of launched itself. I quit my job at a startup as chief medical officer, VP marketing, in 2023. And I said, okay, we're going to focus on this full time. And that was my shift into entrepreneurship. So very quick, steep rise, but I now can confidently say I was so meant to be here. It's always like, yes, this is me. This I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be.
It's fascinating to me because when I listen to your story and you have this background of growing up abroad and the moves and being in different countries, do you think that that played a role in your ability to quickly pivot, as you said, from trailing spouse to entrepreneur?
100%. The one thing that I always answer when somebody asks me, what's your biggest strength? And I almost instantly say, I am probably one of the most adaptable people on the planet because I used to move countries every 3 years. New school, new place, new friends. And you kind of, thankfully, I'm an extrovert ish personality. I do have my moments of introversion, but it allowed me to really become a people person. I enjoy being around people, and that allowed me to navigate these not so easy transitions because you're constantly finding yourself at level 1 all over again, and then you have to build yourself up, and then again there's a level 1, and then you have to build yourself up again. So that grit, that determination, and the universe always throws you some curveballs, so you got to really build that core. But 100% I would say that upbringing definitely shaped me into the professional and the person I am right now.
Right, because you've lived in, really diverse countries. It's not like moving from, Midwest to West Coast or to East Coast. It's not like that. You've had the Eastern European experience, and then now you're in Switzerland. And so, what do you think was like the biggest transition from that culture set to the one where you're in now?
So the beauty about each country that you live in is, first of all, in my case, I had the chance to be a local, not like a tourist. So there's a huge difference there. You're growing up there, no matter your age, you're always growing up. And for me, Switzerland was my first step into corporate life. So how corporate works is very different from how clinics work. It's a totally different mindset, it's a different culture. And Switzerland instilled in me their corporate culture, basically. So I'm always on time. I don't waste too much time in jibber jabber. I get to the point quickly. That's kind of the German Swiss style of, talking in meetings. And then there was this inherent quality of me as an Indian person, and also as a global citizen. There was always that people element. How do we as a team move forward together? How can we get this best deal on the table for all of us involved, all the parties involved? So Switzerland kind of shaped me into the basic foundation of the professional I am today, and they're good values. They're pretty much good values to follow in general. And now it's more of bringing that personality of mine from that global upbringing into the person and the entrepreneur that I am today.
I love how you describe it sort of as a blend of, who you are intrinsically as a person and your earlier childhood memories. You have Indian background, but then there is this, I guess, professional element too in the clinic, which is different from corporate. And then you have the Swiss sort of culture there that you're learning and you've adapted. And I think that it's so important to note on that because so many people think, I'll move from this country to another country and I'll just do things my way. And what I'm hearing you say is that there's so many other elements than just your way. It's not just where you've been. You've got to take into account what industry you're going into, what sector you're going into, and then also the country values that you're going to be working with.
Exactly. And it's never your way. I think that's one of the things that everybody learns growing up. The older you get, the more you realize you could plan something. Maybe you're lucky where your life follows exactly the plan that you laid out, but in my case, it didn't happen that way at all. I did not plan to be in Switzerland at any point in given time, but you work with what you get. You got to build that thing within you of, okay, this is my life now, this is what's happening, and I'm gonna use what I can and see what I can build here. And if you have that mindset, then you're kind of unstoppable. You'll always end up being doing something or the other.
Now, dentistry is kind of similar to, I think, the legal profession in the sense that when you think of a dentist, you think of, you like, immediately a picture comes to mind, right? You think of someone wearing the white coat, the jacket, and a certain sort of personality. And it seems like you kind of had to break that mold to be able to do what you're doing now and just throw some of that away. What are some of the things about, being a typical dentist to what you do now that you had to throw away?
Oh, a lot other than just the technical knowledge.
Did you keep anything?
Yes, the knowledge of the field and also the people skills. So good dentists are very good at explaining to people their condition, and convincing them to get treatment and to take a certain amount of money out of their pockets to get that treatment, which is overall good for them. It has nothing to do with the dentist, but good dentists are great people, people person, so to say. So that definitely stays with me. It's who I am. That's why I did well as a clinician, because my patients and I had a good rapport. But when it comes to clinics, the basic difference between clinical life and corporate life is that in dentistry, first of all, it's a very isolated profession, so to say. And how that works is you're kind of the boss. You have your own clinic, you have your own staff. So you're kind of a CEO from a very early stage, so to say. You're in charge of many other things, not just the patient, but there's many other elements that you're in charge of. And that instills in you this communication style of authority, of being on top of things, because if you drop the ball or something, then everybody, it enters into a space of chaos, and you can't allow that in a clinical scenario. It's just an absolute no. So that's where a lot of dentists, even if there's a lot of hidden emotions, feelings that you kind of have to keep to yourself and get on with it attitude, which is what the profession is all about in the long term, because you're kind of pushing through all those other things that happen, as a human being, and you're always in that position of authority because you don't have a choice really. And imagine a patient who sees an underconfident, kind of timid dentist. Would you really get your treatment from that person? Probably not. You're going to look for confidence, presence, a presence of space, a presence of ownership. So that's what clinical life is in dentistry. Now you move that person into a corporate life, it's a whole different ball game. And nobody really teaches dentists or any clinician how to do that transition. Because a lot of the times as a clinician, you're approached by corporate when they need some sales from you. So you're used to just talking to companies from a salesman or a sales force perspective. You're always listening to them, giving your opinion, asking a whole bunch of questions. You're still in a place of authority because the sales guy wants his deal, right? Move that into corporate, working inside a gigantic structure. So when you move that person into a corporate structure, what usually happens is you're in a team, and you have to understand hierarchy. You have to understand, how do I position myself in this space? It's kind of learning from, as I said, level one all over again, which is for any massive career transition in any industry, to be honest. But it's more teamwork, more people work. You need to have those skills on how to communicate effectively to get the job done. And your opinion might not be accepted. So that's a big one for clinicians, because they're pretty much always accepted when they're approached by companies as a clinician. But then when you start working in corporate, you're like one in many. And that's a learning that I try and teach and mentor a lot of clinicians on all the time, that be the guide, not the hero. And that's the motto I've kept. You have to be the guide and not the hero. And you have to unlearn how you're communicating in order to find your true space in this chosen career that you've taken on.
I really like that. Be the guide and not the hero. There are so many people right now who have practiced in a profession for maybe 10 or 15 years, and they want to do consulting. They want to be the guide, right? In some sort of way, whether they were in the tech space or whether they were a lawyer, and they want to be the guide. And it seems like you were able to draw upon your knowledge and experience of being a dentist to now help others and to help them, sort of whether it's find work or find clients in your work with the global dentist pool, and to really help them overcome some of those challenges. Because I remember before you were saying that it's not easy being a dentist. A lot of people think it's, kind of like Sesame Street. You wake up in the morning and, everything's fine, put on your coat and going, but it's actually pretty tough. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, it's the perfect case of everything is beautiful, clean, and shiny on top, but in reality, it kind of dawns upon you that you have to be the person who's always allowing others to thrive and not yourself. So you really have to keep it in control. As a clinician, first of all, the thing that most people are not aware of is that dentists and doctors have the highest suicide rates in the world. So there's a huge misjudgment right there. And why is that? Because you have a clinic to manage, which is an expensive affair. You can only manage that clinic if you have a constant flow of patients coming in. Nobody teaches you how to market in the traditional education that we get as clinicians, regardless of which field, doctors, dentistry, physiotherapy, whatever case you take. It's a lot of medical training, but very little to none business training. So you have to first find yourself in a learner's mindset from that standpoint and learn how to build a clinic, which is a very expensive affair. Each product you see in a dental clinic is expensive. And then you need to get that return on investment in a quick format, which is not the case because it's one of the most competitive spaces. You have dentists, like 5, 10 dentists in the same alley in some countries. And how do you compete with that? So it's a lot of hidden stress, financial stress, emotional stress. And then people are not allowed to express it because you're in control, you're the doctor, you can't show weakness. And that's how that whole thing translates itself, and the stats speak for themselves when you see how many people choose the most extreme option, which is absolutely not okay for me or anyone. You shouldn't have to do that. So we need to create that space for clinicians to be able to expand their careers and to be okay with testing different other fields, which makes sense for them to allow them to thrive rather than to just be boxed in a clinic with four walls for 40 years, endlessly. So that's kind of my input of the kind of challenges that nobody really talks about. But I think it's important that we just talk about it because it's so common.
Yeah, and we have to hold space for that. And, post COVID, and now in this era where we're in, where we have technology, that on one hand, people feel threatened. People feel as though AI may take away their jobs. And then you have another side of that argument, which is technology can actually help me give the value that I was creating previously to more people. And that's why I like the work that you're involved in right now and the work that you're doing is because you're really leaning into technology and innovation to help the profession. Can you tell us a little bit about the work that you're doing now?
So basically, what we're doing now is we've created an ecosystem, so to say. And this is niching for the dental industry for now. And the way we're doing that is you essentially, dentistry is all about two key players. You have dental product companies, and then you have dentists. Neither can exist without the other. So there's that understanding, base foundation understanding of here are the two key players in the dental industry. So for this side of the story, for dental companies, we've created the Global Dentist Pool, which is essentially a global cohort of clinicians who want to support industry in multiple ways. And they can, for the first time, get access to this clinician cohort for different project needs. And this could be, from the engineering perspective, the pain point is when you work with these teams, immediately you realize that the engineers are not getting access to day-to-day clinicians to help design their products effectively. The current trend is that they'll go to one or two key opinion leaders who are like the top researchers in that specific area for their opinion. And then they take that opinion and they build a product out of those very subjective 2 opinions or 3 opinions. And they spend millions and millions of dollars in the process and 5 to 6 years in the whole endeavor of getting a high risk or a medium risk product out there in the market. And what they really need in those stages is just access to day-to-day clinicians for their inputs. And currently there's no solution there. So the Global Dentist Pool, first of all, gives you ability for access to those clinicians and get honest, unbiased feedback on your idea so that you can make a product that the market actually needs rather than what you think the market needs. That's stage number one. Then stage number two would be that you have freelance clinicians who are additionally on top of their clinical practice, they're also medtech experts. So they know marketing, they know regulatory, they know clinical research, they know sales, and they've already been involved in these fields in the medtech space for multiple years, and they've been trained on it. So you can actually bring your freelance projects and hire a clinician plus an additional expertise to support you with your projects rather than hiring someone who's not a clinician or doesn't understand dentistry at all. And then you keep reiterating those projects. That's kind of a pain point I've observed directly. And why do that when you have access to this freelance support? So that's why I call it the Upwork Fiverr for Dentech, because essentially that's what we're doing. Companies can go and upload their projects on our platform, and you'll have clinicians from all over the world bid for those projects at competitive pricing, and you get to decide who you want to work with. So that's the company side of what I've built. There's the clinician side, which is, as I said, you know how to use devices, but you have no clue how they're made. So I created this program called the Premium Dental Advisor Program. And essentially, the motivation to do that was this is the first time that clinicians actually get a resource to, number one, learn how medical device development actually happens. Who are the key stakeholders? How does the corporate industry side work exactly? The insider knowledge. And then there's corporate readiness training. How do you write a CV? It's literally that, because nobody teaches us that as clinicians. How do you write a cover letter? How do you approach recruiters? How do you give a good interview? How do you negotiate good salaries and titles? So this is all knowledge which is currently a huge gap. And there's a lot of clinicians who need that in order to make that transition. There's no dearth of clinicians who want to expand their careers. There's enough of them. So that's how I've kind of brought this whole ecosystem together. You upskill, you train, you get these highly specialized profile on one end, and then you give them to the industry who needs that support. And then you could bring projects to the profiles, and then it becomes an ecosystem, a flowing ecosystem. So that's essentially what I've created.
So you've identified, I mean, at least three gaps here. I mean, you have the first gap where it is, okay, you have these dental tech engineers, people who are making the products who may not have diverse data. I would even, yeah, that also spoke to me when you said they don't have, you know, they're kind of focusing on one or two key opinion leaders. But we all know that when you're following that model, a whole host of voices are ignored. And so
Yeah.
you're kind of closing the gap on that. And then you have the expertise of the clinicians, right? And they're able to kind of double hat. Yes, I'm a clinician, but I also know about, you know, regulatory and sales and marketing piece of that too. And then you have servicing the dental clinicians who may need other sorts of expertise, such as, you know, building the CV or other things that they may need to know in their practice, or how do these tools even work? It's
Yeah.
just amazing to me that you've identified these three gaps and now using technology to close it. I mean, was it really just your experience in the space where you came up with this, or was there like a certain frustration where you're like, you know what, that's it, I'm going to make my own global dentist pool because this ain't working?
Well, a little bit of both, but in different contexts. So it was a lot of self observation, and I am a very observant person in general. I'm also a creative person by personality, so I think solutions immediately. It's just who I am. And that's how I've supported my clients for many years in the past as well. So it was almost a need of my brain to spit it out and literally create it. I couldn't rest until it's done and made. That's who I am. Um, but it comes down to not just what I felt, but also the multiple conversations I had. So I vetted the idea before I actually launched it. I spoke to people I don't know. That's my strategy always, that you want to approach your new entrepreneurial idea to strangers first to see what they think about it, and do that as many times as you can to really see if it has something to, build a foundation on. And when you find that validation, for me, in my case, it was two audiences. There's the B2B, which is the companies, and then there's the B2C. So for me, it was B2C is the clinicians, right? So I spoke to these people independently and I said, I'm planning to build something like this. What do you think? And everybody was like, yes, we've been waiting for something like this for a long time. And it's amazing that you're creating this. 100% you have our support. So that's really the best validation that you can ask for, especially in the beginning, that propels you to actually go ahead and start working on creating this solution for all the people involved.
Dr. Namrata, one of the key questions that people ask me is, what kind of business should I start? And I always find that to be such an interesting and telling question because it reveals the fact that the person still has work to do internally and kind of like, how do you want to shape your life? What are your pain points? What are you passionate about? And a lot of people who do coaching or consulting, they also say niche down, right? Niche down, focus on one thing. And I see that you've used your creativity to kind of think about how these three different pain points all relate to each other and can thereby form an ecosystem. What would you say to those people who are like, I don't know what business to start and how can I niche down? And they just sort of need guidance.
Yeah, I mean, in those cases, I give my example. So, because the ultimate decision is in the person's hand, we can only give them examples of how we approached the transition ourselves. And then it's really up to them to see where and which element fits for their given scenario. So, in my case, I I didn't just open my company out of the blue. In COVID, I actually started my company as a side hustle in the evening hours. So as I was employed in corporate, I did have my side hustle and it was clear, transparent. I was only negotiating with companies who would allow me to keep my side hustle. There was no conflict. So the work I did in my day job was clinical regulatory marketing for all high risk, medium risk types of medical devices, but dental. And that urge, as I said, that itch that I have as a person, that, come on, I'm a dentist, I got to do something with my dental thing. And COVID, of course, kind of made it an easy decision for me to open this side hustle. And then I kept that going for 5 years. And then finally, after 5 years, I decided to completely choose one field, but it was very much a hybrid journey. And within that hybrid journey, in my day job, in the corporate job, I went from beginner to executive in 5 years. So that's how quick the rise was. It's a lot of relearning of new concepts. I didn't know anything about regulatory affairs. I taught myself that, and then my work taught me that. I had no clue about clinical research. I had to learn that in my weekends. You give time to yourself. You have to build that knowledge looking forward in the future, that I want to learn this because it's going to add to my profile and make me a stronger professional. And because I like it, because I need to also. So you're doing that in a consistent way. And then finally, you're in a much more secure place to choose. Okay, do I want to keep going with this executive journey in corporate space? Do I want to jump into entrepreneurship? It allowed me to make that transition smoothly, so to say, because I had something to work with already set up. And I had understood how taxes work, and I had understood how to calculate my expenses. And I already had a separate bank account for my business from my freelance, right? I also had a set client base, which I used then to transition into the other parts of the pool and building it and bringing them on board the pool. So that's my advice to people. If you're thinking about what business to start, first of all, you want to try and find, what are you really, really good at? And how can you use that as a side hustle? Start building it and then eventually grow it big enough for you to completely transition into that field. But you always want to do something which you know you're good at. And this can come from people around you. People can tell you, oh, she's really good at speaking to people. Okay. Well, you know what? The one thing you need in entrepreneurship, it's people skills. You got to speak on stages, you got to present, you got to be a good personality. Okay. And then you're smart. So something I know about myself is I'm a smart person. I know how to find solutions, quickly execute, like an execution ninja almost. And I know these things about myself. I've figured them out after a lot of falls and pickups and falls and pickups. And I'm like, this seems to be the right field for me. And I have enough knowledge now to be able to present myself as the founder of this idea, and now to raise awareness and to propagate it so that we can actually grow it into what it deserves to become in the future. So that's kind of my few notes there. Figure out what you're good at, hone down on that, build a side hustle, and then transition.
Yeah. And, listening to you speak, I think there's something else going on in the background, which is you have to believe in yourself. I mean, you cannot come into this with a mindset of, oh, I'm going to try a little bit or I'm going to dip and dab. I mean, of course, you did do the groundwork first. You researched, you spoke to people, but you planned as well. And through all of that, there is this bit of confidence that I'm going to do this, right? Like it's not any sort of half baked or half-wit idea. It's that you are confident in the idea and you're confident in your ability. And I think that that's something else that a lot of people really need to hear is that, when you embark on something like this, you have to believe it, right? Like you have to have that confidence in the idea and in yourself as well.
100%. It's I have to be honest though, it doesn't come like that. You get hit. You always enter something with that doubt. It's normal. You will feel doubt whenever you initiate anything. And it might actually stop you in the beginning to actually take that final leap and just do the damn thing, you know. But it's that persistence and that grit and that ability to adapt. You build that over time. And the most important part, if you really zoom out, it's not about the business or the impact, or people love using the word legacy. And I'm a very different person from that mindset. I'm more like, this is my life, it's my journey. Let's see what I can make out of it. And all of that, the first step of that is understanding who you are. You have to start with you first. You have to fix a lot of things about yourself in that process. And as long as you keep doing that, as long as you keep unlearning, relearning, I think you're bound to find success at the end of that tunnel. But that never really pulled you in the first place. It was this self obsession of, okay, I did this, I could have done better there. So what can I do better the next time? It's more about the self and building your core. That kind of is the biggest takeaway from these kind of activities, whether personal life, professional life, doesn't really matter. You have to keep working on yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's why I always say that entrepreneurship, it's a journey of self-discovery. And I've been through the failures too. Failures, pivots,
Congratulations.
moments where you're like, what am I doing? Am I actually going to post this? Post it anyway. And I really think another key point is like, you don't know who's watching. And that's why I like speaking to people like you, because your story is amazing, right? And you don't know who's listening, who is going to be like, wow, she did that. I have this background, or I was also a trailing spouse, or I'm a professional right now and I'm trying to get out of it and I have a few ideas. And you've taught yourself so much along the way. And I just think that, part of it is the motivation too, seeing other people, whether they're like us or not, quite frankly, but hearing how other people went through the personal transformation to get to where they are
Yeah,
today. Wow. Dr. Namrata, I thank you so much for speaking with us today. And I wanted to, before we close, because we've talked about your journey and we've talked about the product, I want to touch a little bit about where you're at today in terms of building and how people can actually contact you if they'd like to somehow support or to otherwise get to know more about the Global Dentist Pool.
absolutely. So my website is naminarpro.org. Naminar Pro stands for Namrata's Neat Resources for Professionals, in case you're wondering. But my email is namrata@naminarpro.org. It's pretty straightforward. You can reach out to me on LinkedIn. You can reach out to me by email. Um, very easily accessible. And I'm looking for people who are either dentists or in the dental product industry in some form or manner. I pretty much have something for you all the time, always, to help you grow as a professional and as a company. So please do reach out to me. I would be happy to help whatever way I can.
Well, there you have it. All of our dentists who are listening and family members of dentists as well. who are listening and who may know someone that would benefit from this information, please do share. Dr. Namrata, thank you so much for your time today, and it was a pleasure speaking with you.
Same here. Thank you so much.
Hey guys, thank you so much for tuning in and listening to today's episode. I appreciate when you guys tune in and the time that you take to listen to the show and support us. And I have one thing that I'd love for you to do that would really help us out, which is rate the show. If you've enjoyed it, make sure you rate it. You can do it on whatever platform you're listening on. That would do wonders for us. And if you really want to be a super fan and really support the show, there's a link below that you can support us and donate a small monthly contribution, which allows us to continue to create great content for you. Thanks so much again. Appreciate you and see you next time.